What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We're getting a little bit of stuff done. I want to show you a couple things today. We've started on our doors. So I'm going to set you up over here. Hopefully you can see. Okay, so we started taking our door apart. And the first thing you run into when you go to disassemble one of these older doors, let's see if this will pick up okay, are these weird little screws. And get it to focus. There. Those are called a clutch head. And a clutch head screw was used, they were designed in the 30s. They were used up through the 60s. And they were originally made to enable things to be done faster on a production line, like on, Henry Ford's idea. But you can't use a regular screwdriver on them. You can't use an Allen head or a Torx on them. You have to have these little guys. And these are called a clutch head bit. See if I can get a focus. Yeah, there we go. So, anyway, so I had to order a set. So, got them. So, what we started doing is we're taking apart the regulators, the door assembly, everything inside the door because none of it works. It's all frozen up, just stuck from sitting. And most of it's replaceable anyway. So, we're going to get this apart, and then we're going to chase the threads on the hinges. We're going to put the doors back on, and then once the doors are on, I'm going to put in some bracing, and then we're going to start cutting the top. So that's this week's agenda. I did a little bit of stuff over the weekend. Got my LS cleaned up, got it apart. Looks good bottom end wise. So at some point I'll send it out and have it decked and bored. But the cylinders actually look good. For as rusty as that motor was, it sat for like 4 years with the heads off of it. And it actually cleans up pretty decent. So I'm not going to worry about working on engines right yet. I want to get this cab done, get the frame started. So today's goal is to get these doors gutted. So I'm going to pause you for now, and then we'll come back once I've got these apart. And then I'll show you how the mechanisms work in these doors. And then we'll go on to getting the other door apart, and we'll get them both mounted. And then it's time to start cutting stuff, so hang loose. We'll be back in a second. So I forgot to film the initial sequence of completing the gutting of the doors. So as you can see here, I've got the doors completely gutted, and they're sitting back on the cab, just lightly clamped into place. I was going to put the hinges back in, but they were in too bad a shape, so we're going to have to order new ones. But the doors are lined up where I want them to make the cuts. So once we get the roof cut off, you'll see later in the video, I weld in some braces to hold the doors to the cab so that they maintain the door gap alignment that I want once the roof is off. And then you'll see in the next video how it all goes back together, and then how we're going to brace the inside of the cab with the roof back on so that we can do the channeling and the sectioning of the body. Dakota came to say hello, so we had to take a break and pet him. Okay, this is the point where we stop and take a short break. We're going to spin the cab and make the second round of cuts here in a moment. But I took a break. I wanted to show Chris how the body panels are originally put together with lead in between the seam, so that, because they didn't have body filler like we use now, like Bondo, they didn't have that back then. So what they do is they actually leaded the seams together where the different panels join together. And the roof is made up of a bunch of different panels. There's the main roof, then there's the back part of the cab where you see the back window here, and then there's the A-pillars which come down on either side of the windshield. So I showed him that those will eventually get cut out and replaced with metal. So we're going to go back to cutting, and we're going to make the final cuts, and then the roof will be free. So because I got ahead of myself when I was deciding I was going to go ahead and make the cuts and take the roof off, I hadn't put the bracing inside the cab yet to hold it all square. So what I did was, because the cab was trying to separate from the doors a little bit and spread as we made the cuts, I simply decided to take a round of duct tape and tape the A-pillar part of the door that's going to get cut off to the cab, and that held it together until we made the final cuts. And then before everything came off, we ended up actually welding on bracing to hold the cabin doors together so that nothing can move. And I don't remember if it's in this clip, but you'll definitely see it in the next clip that I splice into this. This video is going to get a little long, and I'll probably break it into 2 separate videos, but this keeps everything aligned so that, number one, it doesn't change the cut line on the A-pillars. The B-pillars weren't such a big deal because they're bigger, but we wanted the A-pillars to stay in alignment. So I simply taped them together, and then at some point, I don't remember exactly when, but at some point during this, we decided to go ahead and weld in some short braces between the cab and the doors, and you'll see those as we go on through this. And that's how you take the roof off of a truck. Now, for those of you that might be wondering if I've ever done this kind of thing before, I actually used to do convertible mini truck tops back in the 1980s when the mini truck scene was really coming on. There was a company called Radical Tops. There was actually one before them called Hot Tops, and they didn't last very long, but Radical Tops was a company out of Arizona that made a kit that you could buy, and for a standard cab, like an S10, Toyota, the old Nissan hardbodies, any of the older mini trucks, Rangers, things like that, they actually made a kit, and there were 2 versions. There was a soft top and a hard top. And basically the way those kits worked was you took and cut off your existing roof using templates, measurements that were provided in the kit. Once you took your roof off, you applied the caps, they called them. They were made out of almost the same type of plastic as they use nowadays for 3D printing. It was some kind of a polymer, but anyway, they made those caps to fit over the cut ends after you trimmed them back about 3/8 of an inch, and they would glue on with Marine Tex, and then you put a small bead of silicone around the edges of them, and you actually, with the 4 latches you installed, you could take your roof on and off if it was a hard top. If you had the rag top version of the kit, it would actually fold up like a convertible top, and you could stow it behind the seat or whatever. And I did several of those. I went through their school and learned how to do those. So I've been cutting tops for quite a while, back in the 80s and 90s, and I've done a couple other chop top projects before this one, but there's a couple of new things we're going to integrate into this one, and you'll see as we do that. So my camera battery decided to die right when we got ready to start the second round of cuts. So here's just a bunch of photos we took afterwards showing the different phases of the cut where we had it initially marked, and then after the first cuts were done, then after the second round of cuts where the roof ended up staying at, and showing the difference in
the back window height, where it now looks more like a mail slot and less like a big oval. And I am particularly fond of that look, which is why I did these cuts the way I did. A lot of people choose to keep the original back window size and simply basically cut around it and move it, and I didn't want to do that. So this shows you what we've got. The next video is going to be where we start putting it together. I'm going to cut this video off. This is getting a little long, so I'll get this edited and get it up, and then the next video will show how we section the roof and put it back together so that it looks like it was never cut.